After retiring, I bought a small cottage deep in the forest, hoping to enjoy some peace and quiet. Then my son-in-law called and said, "My parents are moving in with you. If you don't like it, come back to the city." I didn't argue. But when they finally showed up, they were greeted by the surprise I had waiting for them. After 40 years of sacrificing every vacation, every indulgence, every extra hour on the clock, I finally bought my dream, my quiet sanctuary in the mountains. But just as I thought peace was within reach, one brutal phone call plunged me into a war for my autonomy, a battle against betrayal that would shake my family to its core. The keys to my new cabin felt impossibly heavy in my hand as I stood in Rebecca Marsh's real estate office in Cody. Outside, the March wind rustled tumbleweeds across the parking lot. Rebecca beamed, "Congratulations, Mr. Nelson. You're officially a property owner in Park County." Maybe she had handed me the world. My life savings, 4 decades of overtime, packed lunches, and skipped vacations had vanished into that $185,000 cashier's check, now transformed into 800 square feet of timber and solitude. A good 12 miles from anything resembling civilization. I pocketed the keys, my fingers surprisingly steady, and thanked her. The drive was pure decompression. Highway 14 gave way to narrower roads, then gravel, then dirt. My cell service slowly choked itself out. I stopped at a general store for coffee, bread, eggs, butter. When the clerk asked if I was visiting, I just smiled and said, "Living." She nodded, like I'd just imparted some ancient wisdom. The final 2 miles were a climb through pines so dense the afternoon sun barely pierced them. Then, in a sudden clearing, there it was. My cabin. I pulled over, cut the engine. For elk grazed peacefully, 50 yards from the porch. They lifted their heads, gave my truck a lazy once-over, then went back to eating. One flicked an ear at a fly. I just sat there for 5 whole minutes. No horns, no sirens, no neighbor's TV bleeding through thin walls. Just quiet. It was exactly as the photos promised. Weathered cedar, a green metal roof, a stone chimney. Small, yes, but entirely mine. I unlocked the door, stepping into air that smelled of pine sap and old wood smoke. One main room with a kitchenette, a bedroom barely big enough for a double bed, a bathroom so snug you had to enter sideways. Perfect. I slowly, meticulously unloaded my truck. Tools onto the pegboard, each in its designated spot. Books stacked by subject, history, engineering manuals, 3 novels I'd meant to read for a decade. The coffee maker, positioned precisely where the morning sun would hit it first. Every single item placed with intention, bringing order out of the chaos of moving. By the time I finished, the sun was sinking. I made coffee way too late in the day, but I didn't care. I carried it out to the porch, settling into the rocking chair I'd bought specifically for this moment. It creaked under my weight. The elk had moved deeper into the clearing. A hawk circled, riding thermals. I called Beulah. "Dad, are you there? Did you get it?" Her voice was bright, immediate. "Signed the papers this morning," I said, a smile spreading across my face. "I'm sitting on the porch right now, watching elk." "Oh, Dad, I'm so proud of you." The warmth in her tone made my chest tighten. "You earned this." 40 years, I murmured, taking a sip of coffee. 40 years I dreamed about mornings where I drink coffee and watch wildlife instead of highway traffic. "You deserve every moment of peace." She paused. "Cornelius has been so stressed with work lately. Sometimes I forget what peaceful even looks like." Something in her voice snagged me. "Everything okay?" "Oh, fine. You know how it is. Middle management pressures?" She laughed, but it sounded thin, strained. "When can I visit?" "Anytime, honey. You know that." We talked for another 10 minutes. Her students, her garden plans, all safe, superficial topics. When we hung up, I sat watching the mountains paint themselves orange and purple. The coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. Then, an hour later, the phone rang again. It wasn't Beulah. My parents lost their house. Cornelius didn't bother with hello. His voice was flat, the same monotone he used for corporate conference calls. "They're moving in with you for a couple months until they find a place." My hand instinctively tightened on the armrest. Wait, what? Cornelius, I just bought this place. It's barely for a couple months until they find something. I bought this place to be alone. I spent my entire retirement on then you should have stayed in Denver. Friday morning. I'll text you their arrival time. The line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, staring at the clearing where the elk had been. They'd moved on. Smart animals. My knuckles were white on the armrest. I forced myself to relax my grip, to flex my fingers, to breathe. Inside, I poured another coffee I didn't want and sat at the kitchen table. From my jacket pocket, I pulled out a small notepad and a pen, the kind of grid paper engineering pad I'd carried for 40 years. I started writing. Not venting. Questions. Timeline estimates. Resource assessments. The cabin keys sat beside the pad. An hour ago, they'd meant freedom. Now, they meant something else entirely. I picked them up, felt their weight, then set them down with deliberate care. 40 years I'd been the reasonable one, the peacemaker, the man who swallowed inconvenience to keep family peace. Not anymore. Dawn found me still at the table. Empty coffee cups ring my notepad, now dense with lists, diagrams, questions. I hadn't slept, didn't need to. My mind felt sharp, focused, operating on something cleaner than rest. I made fresh coffee, reviewed my notes, then cleaned up, loaded my truck, and drove back to Cody. The Yellowstone National Park Ranger Station was a modern building designed to blend with the landscape. Inside, educational displays showed wolf packs, bear territories. A ranger, maybe 40, with the weathered face of someone who spent more time outdoors than in, looked up. Help you? I just moved up from Denver, I said, trying to sound a little green. Bought a place off County Road 14. Beautiful area, he smiled. You'll want to be careful with food storage. Lots of bear activity come spring. What about wolves? I asked, as casually as I could. Heard they're back in the region. Reintroduction's been successful. He stood, moving to a wall map, pointing to areas marked with colored pins. They're usually shy, but they've got an incredible sense of smell. Can detect prey or food from miles away. He looked at me. You hunting? No, just curious. Want to be prepared. Smart. He handed me a pamphlet. Keep your property clean. Don't leave attractants out unless you want visitors. I took careful notes in my field notebook, wind direction, pack territories, seasonal behavior patterns. I thanked him warmly, mentioning again that I was from Denver and still learning about mountain life. Every word was calibrated to sound naive, concerned, exactly what he'd expect from a nervous newcomer. Back in Cody, I found an outdoor supply store, the kind with taxidermy on the walls. The camera section sat between hunting gear and security systems. Looking for wildlife cameras, I told the clerk. Want to monitor bear activity near my property. He showed me 2 models, motion-activated, night vision, cellular connectivity. These will do you right. We get lots of folks wanting to keep an eye on their land. $340. I paid cash. Wednesday afternoon, back at the cabin, I installed them methodically. One covering the driveway approach, one angled toward the front porch. I tested the motion sensors, checked signal strength, adjusted positions until the coverage was perfect. The engineering part of my brain, 40 years of solving structural problems, found satisfaction in the precision. Hide the cameras enough to be unobtrusive. Position them for optimal capture. Test, adjust, verify. Both cameras connected to my phone with 1 bar of cellular service. Weak, but functional. Thursday morning, I drove back to Cody. The butcher shop was on a side street, serving ranchers and local restaurants. Need 20 pounds of beef scraps, I said. Organ meat, fat trimmings. For dogs. The butcher didn't blink. You got it. $45 for meat wrapped in white paper, loaded into the coolers I'd brought. The smell was immediate and powerful. Blood, fat, raw flesh. Thursday afternoon, I stood in the clearing behind my cabin with the coolers open. The wind came from the west. I checked it the old way, wetting my finger and holding it up. I walked 30 yards from the structure upwind. Then I placed the meat in 3 piles, spreading it to maximize scent dispersion. Not random. Calculated. Close enough to draw predators to the area, far enough that they'd focus on the piles, not the building. I wasn't trying to endanger anyone. I was trying to educate them. Back inside the cabin, I moved through each room, locking windows, turning off unnecessary power, setting the thermostat to minimal heat, protecting my investment while setting my trap. I paused at the door, took one last look at the space I'd inhabited for less than 3 days, and left without hesitation. The drive to Denver took 5 hours. I arrived at my old house just before midnight, the suburban place I hadn't yet sold, still partially furnished, but hollow. I unloaded my truck, set up my laptop in the living room, propped my phone where I could watch the camera feeds. Then I waited. Friday morning at 10 o'clock, a sedan appeared on my phone screen. Leonard and Grace emerged, looking around with expressions I recognized even on the small display: displeasure, judgment. The camera microphone picked up their voices. "This is where he's living now?" Grace wrinkled her nose. "It smells like pine and dirt." "At least it's free," Leonard grumbled, walking toward the cabin. "We'll stay a few months. Let Cornelius figure out the next step." "I don't see why we had to come all the way out here," Grace started, then froze. "Leonard, wolves." 3 shapes emerged from the northwest tree line. Gray and brown, moving with cautious purpose toward the meat piles. Not aggressive, not interested in humans, just hungry. Leonard saw them. His face went white. "Get in the car. Get in the car now." They ran. Grace stumbled, recovered. The car door slammed. The engine roared, gravel spraying as they reversed wildly, then accelerated down the driveway. The wolves, unbothered, continued toward the meat. I closed the laptop and picked up my coffee, taking a slow sip. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "What did you do?" Cornelius's voice had lost its businesslike edge. Now it was just pure fury. "My parents nearly got attacked." "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I warned you. This property is in the wilderness. You set this up. You baited those animals." "Cornelius, I live in wolf country. Wolves live here. This is their home. Maybe you should have asked before assuming you could use mine." "You're insane." You're going to what? Zoom me because wildlife exists on my property? Good luck with that." "This isn't over." "No," I said, "it's just beginning." I pressed end call, set the phone down deliberately, and returned to my laptop. I opened the footage again, watching the wolves finish the meat and disappear back into the forest. Outside my Denver window, the mountains rose in the distance. Somewhere up there, my cabin waited. I'd been planning defense, but sitting there watching the recording one more time, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't about defense anymore. This was about setting boundaries. 2 weeks passed before Cornelius made his next move. I spent those days settling into the routine I'd imagined. Coffee on the porch at dawn, watching elk drift through the clearing, reading books I'd postponed for decades. But the peace felt conditional now, like standing on ice that might crack. I checked my phone more than I wanted to, kept the camera feeds open on my laptop, listening for vehicles on the dirt road. Mid-April brought warmer afternoons and the first serious wildflowers. I was splitting firewood when my phone rang. "Beulah? Dad, please." Her voice broke. She was crying. Cornelius showed me the footage of the wolves. That could have been so much worse. I sat down the axe and walked to the porch. "Beulah, honey, wolves live in these mountains. I didn't create that situation. I warned Cornelius this wasn't appropriate housing for his parents. But you knew they were coming. You could have done something to make it safer." The script was obvious. Every phrase sounded rehearsed. Coached. My daughter turned into his messenger. "I bought this property for solitude," I said, keeping my voice level. "No one asked if I was willing to host guests. But I'm willing to meet with Leonard and Grace to discuss options." "You are?" Hope flooded her tone. "Really? I'll meet them in town. Neutral ground. We'll talk." After we hung up, I stood watching clouds move across the mountains. She genuinely believed she was helping. That made it worse. 2 days later, I drove to Cody for the meeting. I'd spent both evenings preparing, researching comparable rental prices for rural Wyoming properties, printing 3 copies of a standard short-term rental agreement, reviewing property law basics. I practiced my presentation in the truck mirror that morning, testing different phrasings until I found the right balance. Firm but not hostile, clear but not cold. The Grizzly Peak Cafe sat on Main Street, small and local. Wooden tables, landscape photographs, large windows facing the morning foot traffic. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose my position carefully. Table near the window, back to the wall, clear view of the entrance, within range of the security camera I'd spotted above the register. I ordered black coffee and waited. Leonard and Grace arrived exactly on time. Cornelius must have driven them, probably parked nearby, coaching them on what to say. They walked in without ordering anything, sitting across from me like I'd summoned them to court. "Hello, Leonard." "Grace, would you like coffee?" Leonard ignored the question. "Ray, this has gone on long enough. We need those keys today." "We're not here for coffee," Grace added, her voice sharp. "We're here because family is supposed to help family." I pulled the rental agreement from my folder and slid it across the table. The paper made a soft sound against the wood. I aligned it perfectly with the table edge and tapped it once with my index finger. "I agree, which is why I prepared a proposal." Leonard glanced down, then back up, his face reddening. "A rental agreement? You're charging us rent. Market rate for a furnished property in this area. $1,200 monthly, 6-month lease, standard terms. You want money from your own family?" His voice climbed. Other patrons glanced over. "From people who have nowhere to go?" Grace leaned forward, her expression wounded. "I never thought you were this kind of person, Ray. Greedy. Just plain greedy." I stood, collected my folder, and picked up my coffee cup to bus it. A habit, a courtesy, the kind of gesture that separated me from people who expected to be served. "Then I guess we don't have an agreement. You'll need to find alternative housing. You can't just." "Where are we supposed to?" Leonard half rose from his chair. "That's not my problem to solve. Good afternoon." I nodded to the barista on my way out. In the truck, I sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing steadily, letting the adrenaline settle. Then I started the engine and drove home. That evening, my phone became a weapon, aimed at me from multiple directions. The first call came around 6. "Cousin Linda," someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. "Ray, it's Linda. I heard you've been having some difficulties." "Difficulties? From whom?" "Cornelius called me. He's worried about you. Said you're isolated in the mountains, acting strangely." The strategy revealed itself completely. He was building a narrative, planting seeds with every family member he could reach. "Linda, I'm fine. I retired to Wyoming." "That's not strange. That's a plan I've had for years." "He said there was an incident with wild animals, and you refused to help his parents." "That's an interesting version of events. Thanks for checking on me, Linda. I'm doing well." I ended the call and stared at the phone. 20 minutes later, a former colleague from Denver. Same script, different voice. Cornelius had reached out, expressing concern about Ray's mental state. The third call came at 8:30. Beulah again. "Not crying now. Angry. You embarrassed them. In public. What were you thinking?" I offered them a fair solution. They rejected it. A rental agreement. Dad, their family. Cornelius's parents. And this is my home, my retirement, my one place of peace, which I bought with money I saved for 40 years. Cornelius was right. "You've changed. You've become someone I don't recognize." The words landed like she'd meant them to. I kept my voice quiet, controlled, even as something cracked inside my chest. Maybe I have, or maybe everyone else has, and I'm just finally noticing. The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand, watching darkness settle over the mountains. 3 calls in one evening, all saying the same thing. Ray Nelson is unstable, dangerous, unreasonable. The isolation I'd sought was being weaponized, turned into evidence of mental decline. Cornelius wasn't trying to take the cabin anymore. He was trying to destroy my credibility first, make me seem incompetent, turn the family against me so no one would believe my version of events. Classic strategy. Isolate the target, control the narrative, strike when they're defenseless. I opened my laptop and began typing. "Mr. David Thornton, attorney at law." I sent the email at 9:47 that night. Careful words, factual language, no emotion bleeding through. I needed legal advice regarding family pressure over property ownership, potential claims, asset protection. I included the basics: my age, property value, family situation, and 3 specific questions about elder law and estate planning. Then I poured myself a bourbon, 1 glass, 2 fingers, no ice. I wasn't a heavy drinker, but tonight warranted it. The porch was cold for April, but I sat out there anyway, watching stars emerge over the mountains. Somewhere down there, Cornelius was planning his next move. I intended to be several steps ahead. Morning came with an email waiting. David Thornton had responded at 7:15. He could meet Thursday afternoon at his office in Cody. Fee structure: $300 per hour. I confirmed the appointment immediately. For the next 3 days, I organized documentation. My engineering background served me well. Everything labeled, dated, cross-referenced. Property deed in one folder, purchase documents in another, family tree diagrams showing relationships, written timeline of events starting with Cornelius's first call, transcripts of key phone conversations from my detailed notes, printouts of the rental agreement Leonard had rejected. By Thursday morning, I had a leather portfolio case packed with evidence that could build a case as solid as any foundation I'd ever engineered. Wednesday evening, my phone rang. Beulah. Her voice sounded thin, exhausted. Dad, I'm sorry I yelled at you after the coffee shop thing. I'm exhausted. I understand, honey. This has been hard on everyone. Cornelius is so stressed. He's been trying to help his parents ever since Leonard lost all that money. I went very still. Lost money? What happened? Oh, you didn't know? Leonard was playing poker online. Lost $47,000 over 6 months. That's why they lost the house. It was mortgaged for the gambling debts. $47,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. That's a substantial amount. No wonder Cornelius has been under pressure. Yeah, and he keeps talking about solutions, about how if we could just, I don't know, reorganize family assets. She was talking faster now, stress overriding caution. He mentioned something about putting your cabin in a family trust so it could benefit everyone eventually for your estate planning, you know? And the property value is probably already up since you bought it in March. Every word was a piece clicking into place. A family trust. That's an interesting idea. When did Cornelius suggest this? A few weeks ago. He said it would be good for tax purposes when in the future. I don't really understand estate planning stuff. Neither do I. That's why I'm consulting an attorney this week, just to make sure everything's proper. An attorney? Her voice sharpened. Dad, is that necessary? At my age, with property worth this much? Yes, it's the responsible thing to do. After we hung up, I added 6 pages of notes to my documentation. Leonard's gambling. Cornelius's scheme disguised as estate planning. The timeline of desperation driving aggression. Thursday afternoon, I drove to Cody and parked across from Murphy's Hardware on Sheridan Avenue. Thornton's office occupied the 2nd floor. Professional signage, steady foot traffic, well-maintained building. I watched for 5 minutes, assessing. Then I grabbed my portfolio and went inside. David Thornton was 50-something, Wyoming weathered, with the direct manner of someone who'd grown up on a ranch before law school changed his path. His office had wooden furniture, law books, a framed degree from the University of Wyoming, and a window overlooking Main Street. I presented my documentation in sequence: property papers, family diagram, timeline evidence. Each document handed across at the appropriate moment. Thornton took notes, asked clarifying questions. I had answers prepared. Mr. Nelson, I have to say, this is the most organized intake I've seen in years. You've documented everything. 40 years in construction engineering. Documentation prevents disputes. In this case, it's going to protect you significantly. He leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. Here's my assessment. Your son-in-law is attempting to establish grounds for claiming you're incompetent or need oversight. The smear campaign. The stories about dangerous behavior. These are preliminaries to a potential conservatorship claim. Conservatorship? Taking away my legal rights? It's a tactic. Not always successful, but it can tie up your assets. In court for months while they argue you can't manage your affairs. The solution is to prove conclusively that you are managing your affairs confidently, which is what we're doing right now. What's the next step? Revocable living trust with an independent trustee. I'll be frank, it'll cost about $2,400 in legal fees, but it makes you essentially untouchable. The trust owns the property, not you personally, so family pressure becomes legally meaningless. Do it. How soon can we have it ready? 2 weeks. I'll draft the documents. You'll review and sign. We'll record it properly. After that, your property is protected. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When I left, the sun was lower, but I felt clearer than I had in weeks. Following Thornton's advice, I drove to the public library instead of going home. I chose a corner computer terminal, back to the wall, habit, and accessed Colorado property records. Public databases I'd navigated before during my engineering career, building permits, property liens, easements. I entered Beulah and Cornelius's address and downloaded their mortgage history. The home equity line of credit hit me like cold water. $35,000, dated 8 months ago. Single signature authorization. Cornelius's name only. I printed the documents with hands that didn't shake, but wanted to. Added them to my folder. Drove back to the cabin in silence. That evening, I called Thornton from the porch. David, I found something. My daughter's house has a $35,000 helic that she didn't know about. Taken out by her husband. Yes. 8 months ago. Colorado property records. Colorado allows single-spouse helics under certain conditions, but hiding it from a spouse, that's a different matter. Has she discovered it yet? No. I'm not sure when or if I should tell her. That's not a legal question, Ray. That's a family question. But from a legal perspective, this information explains his motivation. He's likely using your cabin scheme to cover existing debts. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and spread everything out. Attorney notes on the left, family communications in the center, financial discoveries on the right. Leonard's $47,000 gambling debt led to Cornelius's $35,000 helic to cover part of it, which led to financial pressure, which led to the scheme to acquire my cabin and eventually liquidate it for cash. Everything connected. I pulled out a legal pad and started drawing lines between related facts, circling key points, writing questions. Can Thornton investigate helic legality? Does Beulah have legal recourse? When to inform Beulah? How to protect her without alienating her further? My phone buzzed. Text from Thornton. Trust documents ready Monday for review. I replied, I'll be there. Then I made one final note at the bottom of my pad. Cornelius is cornered. Cornered animals attack. Prepare for escalation. 3 weeks later, on a Monday morning in early June, I drove to Thornton's office for the trust signing. The portfolio case beside me held 3 weeks of organized financial records, bank statements, retirement accounts, property appraisals, investment documentation, everything consolidated. Thornton's assistant had the documents waiting on the conference table. 43 pages total, each signature line flagged with a yellow tab. I read every page while Thornton answered emails at his desk, giving me time. The Revocable Living Trust designated him as independent trustee. Total assets, $290,000. The cabin, my retirement funds, everything I'd built in 40 years. The critical provision sat on page 17. Beulah inherits only if divorced from Cornelius, or if Cornelius signs a legal waiver of claims to the property. This provision here, Thornton said, joining me at the table, the conditional inheritance for Beulah. You understand this might create family conflict. The conflict already exists. This just protects her from being exploited through my property. If Cornelius discovers this trust structure, he'll likely react aggressively. Let him. Everything here is legal. He has no grounds for challenge. Thornton's expression was knowing. Legal grounds and family drama are different things. Are you prepared for him to escalate? I've been preparing since March. That's why we're sitting here. He smiled slightly. Fair enough. Let's execute these documents. My signature was steady on every page. The notary, Thornton's assistant, professional and efficient, applied her seal with practiced precision. The sound it made was satisfying. Structural integrity. Legal edition. I wrote a check for $2,400 and left with copies of everything in a sealed envelope. The rest of that week, I worked through my financial institutions methodically. Each phone call followed the same pattern. Identify myself. Request beneficiary change forms. Explain the trust structure. Confirm documentation. Mr. Nelson, I have your beneficiary change request. The retirement account administrator said you're removing your daughter as beneficiary. No, I'm designating my revocable living trust as primary beneficiary. My daughter inherits through the trust. May I ask why you're making this change? Asset protection and estate planning. I have concerns about third-party claims. Understood. We'll process this within 5 business days. I'd like email confirmation as well, please. Of course. Is there anything else? Yes. Note in my file that this change was made voluntarily, with legal counsel. I'm documenting my competency for all financial decisions. A pause. That's unusual, but I'll add that notation. By Friday, every asset I owned was protected within the trust structure. I kept a checklist on my kitchen table, marking each completed task with satisfaction. 2 weeks later, Beulah called. Dad, Cornelius has been so weird lately. Her voice sounded thin and exhausted. Asking about your finances, whether you've updated your will. I sat down my coffee carefully. I have done some estate planning. It's responsible at my age. I know, but he got really angry when I mentioned you set up a trust. He called it a betrayal. Why would your estate planning betray him? It's not his inheritance. My hand tightened on the phone. Beulah, did you tell him details about the trust? I just mentioned you set one up. I didn't think it was a secret, is it? No, not a secret. Just private. What exactly did Cornelius say? He said you're cutting the family out and being manipulated by lawyers. Dad, what's going on? Why does he care so much? That's a very good question, honey. One you should probably ask him directly. After hanging up, I immediately called Thornton. Cornelius knows about the trust. His response was immediate. How soon can you get a medical evaluation? The next day, I was repairing the porch railing when Cornelius's car came fast up the driveway, spraying dirt and gravel. He jumped out, didn't close the door properly, and stormed toward me. I calmly set down my tools, retrieved my phone, and started recording video. I stood at the top of the porch steps, 6 stairs up, giving me an elevated position. Cornelius had to approach uphill, looking up at me. I held the phone at chest height, lens obviously pointed at him. Cornelius, you're on my property uninvited. I'm recording this conversation. I don't care about your recording. His face was red, movements aggressive. You set up some legal scheme to steal from your own daughter. The trust protects my assets and ensures Beulah inherits appropriately. It's completely legal. Appropriately? What does that mean? Unless she divorces me. That's what you really want, isn't it? The trust ensures my property isn't subject to claims by third parties. That's standard estate planning. Third parties? I'm family. Your son-in-law. You're my daughter's husband. You have no legal claim to my property. The trust simply formalizes that reality. His voice climbed higher. We'll see about that. I'll get a lawyer. I'll contest this. I'll make sure you never see Beulah again. You're threatening to isolate my daughter from me because I protected my own property? That's interesting. For the record, this isn't over. Then leave my property now or I'll call the sheriff for trespassing. He stormed back to his car. The engine roared, gravel sprayed as he reversed wildly and sped down the driveway. I stopped recording, reviewed the footage immediately. Faces visible. Audio clear. Threats documented. I uploaded it to cloud storage and emailed a copy to Thornton with subject line, Evidence, Hostile Confrontation. That evening, I wrote a detailed incident report, date, time, what was said. No witnesses, unfortunately, but the video captured everything. Thornton's response came within an hour. Continued documenting everything. Consider medical evaluation to preempt competency challenges. Expect retaliation. They're running out of options. I called Dr. Patricia Chen's clinic the next morning. The receptionist asked if something specific prompted the request. I'm 67. I own property, and I want documentation that I'm healthy and competent. Preventive planning. The appointment was scheduled for the following Monday. I sat at my table that night, reviewing the confrontation video, watching Cornelius's rage play out on the small screen. His mask had dropped completely when the money was threatened. Every word recorded, every threat documented. My phone buzzed. Email from Thornton. Good thinking on medical eval. They'll likely try adult protective services next. Standard playbook for these situations. Stay ahead of them. I typed back, already scheduled. Appointment next week. Before closing the laptop, I looked at the framed photo of young Beulah on the mantel. 8 years old, missing her front teeth, laughing at something I'd said. I wondered how much collateral damage this war would create before it ended. Monday morning found me at Dr. Chen's clinic 15 minutes early. The medical building was modern, single-story, efficient. I filled out paperwork requesting copies of all test results and assessments. When Dr. Chen called me back, I explained directly. I'm 67, own property, and want baseline medical documentation proving my physical and mental competency. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, with the weathered competence of someone who'd practiced rural medicine for decades. Her expression showed understanding. I see. Unfortunately, I've encountered situations like this before. Adult children sometimes challenge parents' competency to gain control of assets. That's exactly what I'm preventing. Can you provide a detailed written assessment? Absolutely. I'll conduct comprehensive cognitive testing and provide a formal letter for legal purposes. Correct. I want documentation that can stand up in court if necessary. Then let's be thorough. The examination took 90 minutes. Blood pressure, blood work, then cognitive testing, mini mental state examination, clock drawing, memory recall exercises. She asked me to draw a clock showing 3:15. I drew it precisely. She asked me to remember 3 words, apple, table, penny, and recall them after 5 minutes. I remembered all 3. She asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens. I did so accurately. When finished, Dr. Chen typed notes at her computer, then printed a letter on clinic letterhead. Mr. Ray Nelson is mentally competent, physically healthy, fully capable of managing his own affairs and making independent decisions regarding his property and finances. Patient alert, oriented, cognitively intact, no signs of dementia, confusion, or diminished capacity. She signed it, applied the clinic stamp, handed me both the letter and copies of all test results. $240 for the extended evaluation. I paid by credit card, noting the transaction carefully for my records. 2 days later, I was in my workshop shed organizing tools when an unfamiliar sedan pulled up. A professional-looking woman in her 40s emerged, carrying a tablet and official folder. Mr. Nelson, I'm Margaret Willows from Adult Protective Services. I'm here regarding a complaint filed about your welfare. The flash of anger was immediate, but I kept my expression neutral. A complaint by whom? I can't disclose that during my initial assessment. May I come in? Of course. Would you like coffee? No, thank you. This is a standard welfare check. I led her inside. Door held open. Transparency. I should tell you up front, I'm involved in a property dispute with family members. I suspect this complaint is part of that conflict, not genuine concern about my welfare. I appreciate your honesty. I'll conduct my assessment objectively. If the complaint is unfounded, I'll document that. Margaret walked through the cabin with her tablet, documenting everything. The kitchen was clean, organized, bills paid, and filed systematically. Refrigerator stocked with fresh food, bathroom tidy, bedroom orderly. No safety hazards, no signs of neglect or confusion. Do you have any difficulty managing daily tasks? Cooking, cleaning, paying bills. No difficulty at all. I've lived alone since retiring. I manage everything independently. The complaint mentions concerns about your mental state. Have you experienced memory problems, confusion, or difficulty making decisions? I retrieved the folder from my desk. I had a comprehensive medical evaluation 2 days ago, specifically to address this concern. She read Dr. Chen's assessment carefully. This is very thorough and recent. Most people in your situation don't have current medical documentation. I anticipated false allegations. I wanted evidence ready. That's quite strategic thinking, Mr. Nelson. 40 years as an engineer. I believe in planning ahead. I also provided recent bank statements showing responsible financial management and copies of my trust documents proving sophisticated estate planning. Margaret took extensive notes. Her professional demeanor remained neutral, but I recognized the pattern in her questions. She'd seen this before. Family exploitation disguised as concern. 3 days later, Attorney Thornton obtained copies of the official complaint through legal channels. I read it at my kitchen table, slowly, completely, multiple times. Cornelius and Leonard had signed as co-complainants. The allegations were specific and completely false. Claim: Ray threatened family members with weapons. False. I've never owned firearms. Claim: Exhibits paranoid behavior, including security cameras everywhere. The cameras exist for legitimate property protection after actual threats. Claim: Refuses medical care. False. I just completed a comprehensive evaluation. Claim: Struggles with basic tasks and makes irrational financial decisions. The trust was sophisticated planning, not irrational. Grace provided a supporting statement claiming I endangered them with wild animals. The wolf incident from March, now twisted into evidence of incompetence. The complaint requested mandatory psychiatric evaluation and possible conservatorship proceedings. My jaw tightened as I read. My knuckles went white, gripping the pages. They weren't just attacking my property anymore. They were attacking my autonomy, my competency, my freedom. This was war. 10 days after Margaret's visit, official notification arrived. Adult Protective Services case closed. Complaint determined unfounded. Margaret's report stated clearly, subject is competent, living independently and safely. No evidence of exploitation, neglect, or diminished capacity. Recent medical evaluation confirms cognitive and physical health. Complaint appears motivated by family property dispute rather than genuine welfare concerns. No further action warranted. I created a new folder labeled APS False Complaint Evidence and filed everything systematically. The original complaint with false allegations, Margaret's assessment report, case closure letter, my medical evaluation, photographs of my well-maintained cabin, my written rebuttal to each false claim with supporting evidence. The folder joined the growing collection on my shelf. I was building a comprehensive case file. My phone rang. Ray, I found something. Leonard and Grace have been using your cabin address for something. Public records show mail being sent there in their names. This could be mail fraud or identity theft. We need to investigate immediately. I looked out the window at the mailbox by the road. I hadn't thought to check for mail addressed to people who don't live here. I'm heading there now. I grabbed my truck keys, wondering what else I was about to discover. I grabbed my keys and drove down the long driveway to the mailbox. A quarter-mile of dirt road, dust rising behind the truck in the late afternoon heat. August in Wyoming made the air shimmer above the ground. The mailbox was standard aluminum on a weathered post, surrounded by tall grass. I pulled on gloves before opening it. Didn't want my fingerprints on mail that wasn't mine. 3 envelopes, all addressed to Leonard Harrison or Grace Harrison at my cabin address. Wyoming Department of Family Services. First Mountain Credit Union. Social Security Administration. I photographed each envelope carefully with my phone, front, back, postmarks visible, dates clear. Then I placed them in a plastic evidence bag I'd brought specifically for this purpose and drove back to the cabin. Thornton answered on the first ring. Ray, I found something significant. Leonard and Grace have been using your address for official correspondence. For what purpose? Benefits fraud, possibly. They're receiving mail from Wyoming Social Services, and they've opened a bank account using your cabin address, but your camera footage proves they don't live there. That's a federal crime, isn't it? Mail fraud, benefits fraud, potentially identity theft if they claim to have your permission. We're talking years in federal prison if prosecuted. I looked at the evidence bag on my kitchen table. Then we report it. I'm not covering for criminals just because they're related to my son-in-law. Understood. I'll prepare the evidence package and contact the U.S. Attorney's Office. Ray, this changes everything. Once federal charges are filed, their credibility is destroyed. Good. Maybe they'll finally face consequences for their actions. The next week moved quickly. I compiled evidence with the same precision I brought to 40 years of engineering projects. Security camera footage showing Leonard and Grace's single, brief visit in May. Utility bills proving no additional occupants. The mail records. My sworn statement that I never gave permission to use my address. Thornton forwarded everything to Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison in the Economic Crimes Division. Morrison called me 3 days later. Mr. Nelson, Attorney Thornton provided compelling evidence of benefits fraud using your property address. I never gave permission for them to use my address. I have camera footage proving they don't live here. I've reviewed the footage. It's clear they visited once briefly and never returned. How long has mail been arriving in their names? Based on postmarks, at least 6 weeks. That establishes a pattern, combined with benefits applications claiming Wyoming residency. We have sufficient evidence for a federal investigation. I'll be frank. This will likely result in criminal charges. I'm not trying to ruin their lives, but I won't allow my property to be used for fraud. You're doing the right thing by reporting this. We'll handle it from here. While Thornton investigated Leonard and Grace's fraud, he discovered something else in Colorado public records. Cornelius and Beulah's home had 3 missed mortgage payments. $8,400 in arrears. Notice of default filed. First step toward foreclosure. Ray, this explains his desperation. Thornton said. He was counting on your cabin to solve his financial crisis. When your trust blocked that plan, he had no backup. I sat at my kitchen table, processing this. His own home is at risk. There's an unconventional option I need to mention. You could purchase the defaulted debt. Banks sell delinquent loans at a discount to collection companies. You'd become the creditor, but anonymously through an LLC. Cornelius would never know. The implications settled over me slowly. That would give me complete leverage. Yes, but it's also ethically complex. You'd control whether your daughter keeps her home. Let me think about it. I walked my property that evening, circling the cabin, following the tree line, considering. If I bought the debt, I'd control Cornelius's future. That was power I'd never wanted. But if the bank foreclosed, Beulah would lose her home. She was innocent in all this. The next morning, I called Thornton. Do it. Buy the debt. But Beulah can't know yet. Not until I can explain everything. The transaction took a week. $31,000 from my savings to an intermediary firm which purchased the debt and created Mountain Holdings LLC with me as beneficial owner. Cornelius received notification that his loan had been sold, but no information about the new creditor. I filed the wire transfer receipt in a folder labeled simply leverage. By mid-August, my position had transformed completely. Leonard and Grace faced federal investigation. Cornelius's mortgage debt was secretly under my control. Every manipulation attempt was documented. My own property and assets were legally untouchable. But I felt no triumph, just weariness. This was supposed to be peaceful retirement. Instead, it had become warfare where my opponents forced me to fight back. I sat on my porch at sunset. The evidence folders stacked beside me. And I made my decision. Beulah deserved to know the truth. All of it. She deserved to understand what her husband had done. What danger her home was in. What her father had been protecting her from. I pulled out my phone and typed, "Honey, we need to talk. Can you come to the cabin this weekend? Just you. It's important." Her response came 10 minutes later. "Is everything okay? You're worrying me." "Everything's fine with me, but there are things you need to know about your financial situation. Things Cornelius hasn't told you." "What things?" "Dad, you're scaring me." "Not over text. In person. Saturday afternoon. I'll make lunch. Cornelius has a work trip this weekend. I can come Saturday." "Perfect. Just you. This conversation is between us." "Okay. I'll be there around noon." I sat down the phone and looked at the mountains darkening against the sunset. Tomorrow, I'd prepare. Saturday, I'd tell my daughter how badly her husband had betrayed her trust. The truth wouldn't be easy. She might not believe me initially. She might be angry. But I'd kept these secrets long enough. Saturday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I woke early, nervous in a way I hadn't been throughout this entire conflict. Facing Cornelius required strategy. Facing my daughter required something harder, honesty that would hurt her. I cleaned the cabin, already clean, but I needed activity. Prepared chicken salad for sandwiches, her childhood favorite. Organized the evidence folder on the kitchen table where she'd sit. Her sedan appeared around 11:30, dust trailing behind on the driveway. She emerged looking tired, worried. I met her on the porch and hugged her. She was tense. We started with coffee and small talk, her teaching job, the weather, anything but the real conversation. But the folder on the table kept drawing her eyes. Finally, Dad, what's going on? Your text scared me. I took a breath. Honey, there are things about your financial situation that Cornelius hasn't told you. Serious things? She laughed nervously. What? Did he forget to pay a credit card bill? He sometimes gets distracted. Your house is in foreclosure. 3 months of missed mortgage payments. The bank was about to take your home. Her face drained of color. That's not possible. We pay the mortgage. Cornelius handles it online every month. That's what he told you. Here's what actually happened. I slid the notice of default across the table. She read it slowly, her hands beginning to shake. This says the loan was sold to Mountain Holdings LLC. Who is that? That's me. Well, technically, a company I own through my attorney. I bought your debt from the bank. You bought our mortgage? Shock transformed her expression. Why would you? How can you even? What does that mean? It means instead of the bank foreclosing and you losing your home, I control the debt. You and Cornelius owe me now, not the bank. She stood abruptly, emotion rising. This is insane. Why didn't you just tell me the mortgage was behind? Would you have believed me, or would Cornelius have explained it away? I needed leverage to protect you from what's coming next. I let that settle, then continued. There's more. 8 months ago, Cornelius took out a home equity line of credit for $35,000 against your house. That's not true. We'd both have to sign for that. I slid the HELOC documents across. In Colorado, under certain circumstances, one spouse can secure a HELOC. Here's his signature. Where's yours? She examined the papers, hands shaking badly now. I never signed this. I've never even seen this paperwork. $35,000. Where did it go? Best guess? Covering some of Leonard's gambling debts. Remember you told me Leonard lost $47,000 in online poker. Cornelius was trying to fix his father's problem using our house as collateral without telling me? Yes. And when that wasn't enough, when my cabin scheme failed and he couldn't get more money, he simply stopped paying your mortgage. I suggested we eat. She initially refused. How can you think about food right now? But I insisted gently. We needed a break before the next revelations. The sandwiches tasted like dust, but we ate anyway. Afterward, I showed her the rest, systematically, chronologically. The recording of Cornelius's threatening confrontation on my porch. The APS false complaint where he tried to have me declared incompetent. Leonard and Grace's federal mail fraud using my address. Each piece of evidence carefully presented with dates and context. She listened. Initially defensive, Cornelius wouldn't do that. Then doubtful, are you sure these documents are real? Finally, as the evidence became overwhelming, devastated. When I showed her the APS complaint where her husband tried to have her father's legal rights taken away, she broke. Not gentle tears, but wrenching sobs that shook her shoulders. I let her cry, didn't offer platitudes, just sat present. When she could speak, it was through tears. How long have you known? Pieces since May. Everything since July. She looked at me with hurt and anger. Months? You've known for months that my marriage is a lie, that I'm in financial danger, and you didn't tell me. I met her eyes. If I told you in May with no proof, would you have believed me? Or would Cornelius have convinced you I was paranoid, vindictive, exactly what he was already saying? Her voice dropped, quieter, knowing I was right. I don't know. Probably not. That's why I waited. That's why I gathered evidence, so you'd know the truth was real, not just your father's opinion. I refilled her coffee, pushed the sugar bowl toward her. She liked it very sweet when stressed. A detail from childhood. Eventually, I had to present the choice. You have a decision to make, and you need to make it soon. What decision? Stay with Cornelius or leave him? I won't make that choice for you. How can I possibly decide that right now? You have until the end of August. That's about a week, because federal agents are going to arrest Leonard and Grace within 2 weeks for fraud. When that happens, everything becomes public. Cornelius will be questioned. Your marriage will be news in a town small enough that everyone knows everyone. She was overwhelmed. This is too much. I can't think. If you leave Cornelius, file for divorce, protect yourself legally, I'll forgive the mortgage debt on your house. You'll own it free and clear. I will help you rebuild. You're bribing me to leave my husband. I'm offering you a lifeline. Whether you take it is your choice, but understand, if you stay with him, I can't protect you from what's coming. Hours later, she gathered her things, exhausted. I walked her to her car, carrying a folder of document copies. Before getting in, she turned. Did you ever think about what this would do to me, knowing all this? Every single day since I found out. That's why I built such a strong case. So you'd know I wasn't exaggerating. I don't know if I can forgive you for waiting so long. I understand. But I'd rather have you angry at me for waiting than destroyed, because you didn't know in time to protect yourself. I need time to think. You have a week. After that, everything moves forward with you or without you. She looked at me with exhausted eyes. I don't know who to trust anymore. Trust the documents. They don't lie. People do. She drove away without looking back. I stood in the driveway watching until her car disappeared, wondering if I'd just lost my daughter or saved her. 5 days later, Wednesday morning, I was drinking coffee on the porch when my phone rang. Thornton. It's happening now. Federal agents are executing arrest warrants for Leonard and Grace in Colorado. Thought you should know. I sat down my coffee carefully, not celebrating, just acknowledging. Thank you for telling me. An hour passed. Then my phone rang again. Beulah. Her voice shaken. Dad. Cornelius just got a call. His parents were arrested by federal agents. Something about fraud. Did you? Were you involved in this? I took a breath. I reported crimes to the proper authorities. What happened after that was the justice system doing its job. Long silence. Then quietly, I need to call you back. The line went dead. I sat back down, staring at the mountains, wondering if my daughter would ever forgive me for setting this chain of events in motion. Within 3 hours, Cornelius called, screaming. You did this. You turned them in. You destroyed my family. I remained silent, letting him exhaust himself. Your parents committed federal crimes using my property. I reported it. That's what law-abiding citizens do. I'll tell everyone. I'll make sure they know you orchestrated this, that you're vindictive and cruel. Go ahead. I have documentation of every crime they committed. My attorney will be happy to share it publicly. Thornton had driven to my cabin specifically for this moment. I handed him the phone. Mr. Harrison, this is David Thornton, legal counsel for Ray Nelson. His voice was professional, measured, final. Your parents committed federal crimes. My client fulfilled his civic duty by reporting those crimes to authorities. Any attempt to defame him will result in immediate legal action. Do you? Click. Cornelius had hung up. Friday afternoon, Cornelius attempted to sell the house he shared with Beulah, desperately needing cash for his parents' legal defense, for his own survival. But the title search revealed the problem. The mortgage was in default and owned by Mountain Holdings LLC. His realtor explained he couldn't sell without the lien holder's approval. Cornelius called Thornton in a panic. Your firm owns my mortgage. How's that possible? My client purchased your defaulted debt through legal channels. You were notified weeks ago that your loan was sold. I need to sell this house. My parents need lawyers. Thornton's response was calm. My client is willing to discuss terms. You'll receive a formal offer within 24 hours. Saturday morning, a courier delivered a certified letter. Inside, a formal offer from me through Thornton's firm. Terms: I would forgive the entire mortgage debt, $35,000 remaining balance plus $8,400 in arrears. Total debt forgiveness of $43,400. Conditions: Cornelius must sign divorce papers with no asset claims. He must sign a legal waiver relinquishing any claims to my property, estate, or assets. He must sign a sworn statement acknowledging he had no legal right to use my cabin or involve me in his financial problems. Deadline: 72 hours. If he refused, I would foreclose immediately. He'd lose the house anyway, with nothing gained. Cornelius called Beulah, tried to convince her to fight this with him. Her response, which I learned later, was simple. I already filed for divorce yesterday. Sign the papers, Cornelius. It's over. Monday morning, Cornelius appeared at Thornton's office. Thornton described him later: disheveled, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking. He signed every document: divorce agreement, property waiver, sworn statement. When it was done, he asked quietly, "Can I at least keep the house?" Thornton's response was matter of fact. Once the divorce is final, the house will be deeded to Beulah, free and clear. You'll need to find other accommodation. Cornelius left without another word. That same afternoon, my phone rang. Beulah. Her voice was different. Still hurt, still processing, but stronger. Dad. I signed the divorce papers. I'm leaving him. I can't stay in that house. Too many memories. Can you help me find something near you? I want to start over. Relief flooded through me. Not triumph, just profound relief. Of course, honey. We'll find you something perfect. Close enough to visit. Far enough for your independence. Are you disappointed in me for not seeing what he was sooner? Never. You trusted someone you loved. That's what good people do. He betrayed that trust. That's on him, not you. Her voice broke slightly. Thank you. I needed to hear that. You're my daughter. I'm proud of you for making the hard choice. That takes real strength. After we hung up, I walked outside to the porch, sat in the rocking chair I'd bought for retirement. For the first time in months, I simply sat still, without planning, strategizing, or worrying. The evening was clear. Elk grazed in the clearing. Mountains stood eternal in the distance. I rocked slowly, rhythmically, and allowed myself to feel the weight lifting. Not gone completely. Beulah still needed to heal. The divorce needed to finalize. Leonard and Grace still needed sentencing. But lifting. The immediate danger was over. My daughter was safe. My property was secure. Almost finished. Just one more chapter to write, the one where we figure out what peace actually looks like. 2 weeks later, I sat in a federal courtroom in Cheyenne, Wyoming, attending Leonard and Grace's sentencing hearing. I didn't have to be there. The prosecutor didn't require my presence, but I needed to see this through to the end. Leonard and Grace stood before the judge, looking diminished in their federal court attire. Their attorney had negotiated a plea deal, guilty pleas to reduce charges in exchange for lighter sentences. The judge reviewed their criminal history, none, and their ages, then the evidence of their guilt, which was overwhelming. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, you've pleaded guilty to benefits fraud. The court accepts your plea agreement. The judge's voice was firm. I want to be clear about the severity of your actions. You exploited systems designed to help citizens in genuine need. Yes, Your Honor, Leonard said quietly. 2 years supervised probation, $45,000 in restitution and fines, permanent ban from federal and Wyoming state benefit programs. You'll report monthly. Any violation results in immediate imprisonment. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, they said in unison. You're fortunate to avoid prison. Don't squander this opportunity. Dismissed. As I left the courthouse, Leonard caught my eye across the lobby. A moment of mutual recognition. He looked away first, defeated. I felt no triumph, only closure. Beulah told me later that Cornelius moved to a small efficiency apartment in a cheaper area of Denver. He took minimal belongings, whatever fit in his car. I saw him one final time when he came for his things, she said. He looked like a stranger, not angry, just empty. He signed the final divorce papers without a word and left. The divorce was finalized by mid-September. Beulah legally resumed her maiden name, Beulah Nelson. With my help, she found a small 2-bedroom house in Cody, about 15 minutes from my cabin. It was modest but charming, older construction that needed updates, but had good bones and a view of the Absaroka Mountains. I provided the down payment as a gift. Beulah secured a mortgage for the remainder, using her teaching income and her own excellent credit. She also landed a third-grade position at Cody Elementary, starting immediately. I helped her move in, spending a weekend painting rooms and assembling furniture. Simple work, but profoundly meaningful, rebuilding our relationship through practical acts of service. Healing wasn't linear for Beulah. Some days she was optimistic about her fresh start. Other days she was angry at Cornelius, at herself, even at me for not telling her earlier. I listened without defending myself, understanding she needed to process complex grief. We fell into a routine, Sunday dinners together, alternating between her place and mine. During one dinner, while we chopped vegetables together in her new kitchen, she asked, "Do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? Ever want to remarry?" I sat down my knife. Honestly, I don't know, but that's okay. Trust isn't something you're supposed to give freely to everyone. It's earned slowly, through consistent actions over time. Anyone worth having in your life will understand that. She smiled, small but genuine. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just old enough to have made mistakes and learned from them. On a crisp late September evening, Beulah drove to my cabin for dinner. We cooked together, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad, and ate on the porch despite the cooling weather. As the sun set, painting the mountains in orange and gold, a small herd of elk emerged from the tree-line to graze in my clearing. We sat in matching rocking chairs. I'd bought a second one after she moved nearby, and watched in comfortable silence. Then Beulah said quietly, "Thank you, Dad, for everything. For fighting for me, even when I didn't understand it, for being patient while I figured things out." Emotion tightened my throat. "You don't need to thank me. You're my daughter. I'll always fight for you." "I know, but I want to." "You could have walked away, protected just yourself." "You didn't. That was never an option. Family means we protect each other, even when it's hard." "I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner." "Don't apologize for being loyal to your marriage. That speaks well of you." She smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time in months. "Look at that big bull elk. He's magnificent. That's my favorite. I see him almost every evening." I smiled back. "Welcome to the neighborhood, honey. You'll get to know all the regular visitors. I already love it here. This feels like home." It is home for both of us now. Later, after Beulah drove away, I remained on the porch, rocking slowly, watching the last light fade from the sky. I thought back to March, buying this cabin filled with hope for peaceful retirement, then having that peace threatened by Cornelius's ultimatum. The journey from March to September felt like years, but I navigated it without losing myself, without becoming cruel, without abandoning my values. I protected what mattered, using law and strategy instead of retaliation and anger. My daughter was safe, building a new life nearby. My property was secure. My autonomy intact. The antagonists faced appropriate consequences, but weren't destroyed beyond recovery. They could rebuild if they chose better paths. As stars appeared above the mountains, I allowed myself a small smile. This is what I'd wanted all along. Quiet evenings, wildlife, mountain air. And now my daughter, close enough to share it with. Not the retirement I planned, but better, because it was earned through integrity rather than luck. I stood, stretched my back. I wasn't young, after all, and walked inside to call Beulah, just to say good night. Just because I could. Just because she was there, and we were okay. The cabin door closed softly. The mountains stood silent witness as a hard-won and deeply appreciated peace settled over the property like the September night.